Hello everyone, I want to take us through the project for Tech Trend project, which is an online website used for news sharing platform. Now, in this project, we are going to have a Tech Trend UI, which is going to retrieve information from a database of article and an SQL needs and a user, and we have users as well. Then we are going to have an about, index, new post, and a 404 page. So getting started, our structure should be like this. We would have cloned the cloud repository from here, from this GitHub here we have the repository. Then our structure, the structure for the file should look like this. That there's going to be a tech trend where we have a readme.md, the init py, then this app.py. All this information will be there. Where we have informations of all our readme.md, the app.py, the init database. And in this project, we are going to have an ArgoCD, Helm, the Kubernetes, and we are going to add the screenshots. There's also a Vagrant file that is already provided for us and a Docker image. So by the end of this first one, you would have clone or forked the repository, or high cloned the repository. You would have installed Python, and then you would have Git on your machine. You have Docker. I have Docker already stored, and I need to sign into Docker. You have Docker already. Then you have Vagrant. I have Vagrant already, and the virtual bus installed. The virtual bus that you should install should be 6.1.16. So best practice for app deployment. Firstly, we need to construct an else check endpoint, and this else endpoint is going to have a status code of 200 HTTP, and it's going to have a JSON response containing the results OK. It's going to also have an matrix endpoint, and it's going to have an example of a database connection count and a post count depending on this, and we're going to have a logs at the end of this. We're going to retrieve our information using the log. So you're going to, at the end of this, you will make sure that you develop the else endpoint and the matrix endpoint, and then have this. So before we do this, we need to run the application using we need to run Python init.db to run the application. This will initialize the database and overwrite or create a new database.db. And then to run this, we can say python app.py and run the application at this endpoint. So I'll go to the repo that I've cloned. Yeah, this is tech trend. So I'll open a new terminal. I need to seed into the tech trends. Then I'm going to run Python to create the database. So this is going to create a database.db for me. So the next thing is to run python app.py. So this application has started running at this spot. So I'll just go and copy the spot to check the endpoints and see that everything is running. So yeah, this is the application that we are going to use, and this is how it's going to look. You can create a new post. You can check some informations on it, and that is it for this side. Then for the best practice for application deployment, so I'm going to create a else endpoint and the matrix endpoint. So I'll go back to my app.py. So I'll go here. I need to close this first, so I need to stop this application from running. Then I want to close this. So I'll go to this my app.py. So I need to, yeah, we can see that we only have imports, then we have the get database connection, we have the route, which is the endpoint for the route. This we have the about, we have the create, but we don't have that of the else and that of the metrics that is being asked for us to. So what I'll do, I'll just copy and I will explain. So what I have done is I've imported SQLite, I've imported login, system time, and flags from flags. Then this is going to have a logger message. Then he's going to retrieve the database from. We have a set of database that is being provided for us to select from the database post. And for the health, here is the output for the health endpoint. The def health, which has a response of app.response class, JSON, results LDOK, and the status is 200. It's going to have a logger message which is says there's the bug message, and that of the metrics as well. We have another endpoint for metrics. I'll just save this. Then to run the application, so we can confirm that our health and metrics endpoint are added successfully, I'll just say Python hard. So this is running. Then I'll go back to copy the URL, the same URL that I used for the first one. I'm going to use that with the same endpoint to check. So yeah, let me try another post. I'll call this one endpoint. I'll submit. So let me check the health. Yeah, results okay. Let me check the metrics. That's database connection count 8, post count of 8, which is correct. Let me check home. That's if we have home. If not, there's nothing like home, so it's going to generate a 404 error not found. Then I can retrieve information. I can check the about page. Depending, you just try multiple tags on it so that you're going to have your output. So I'm going to have a logger message. So when I go back, you can see that these are my outputs from what I tried out, where I retrieved the KubeCon, then the about, when I created a new post, yeah, test debugger. So these are my outputs, which means that all the endpoints are working correctly as expected. So yeah, we have successfully created the health endpoint, the metrics endpoint, and now we're going to add the logs to the application in app.py. Now we have the the logs to the application in app.py. So we have all of it here, all the logs here, which is fine. So I can just stop this from running and I'll close the application as well. So that is it for here. So the next side is the Docker for application packaging. Now for this Docker for application packaging, we have to build a Docker file. And the Docker file is going to use a Python based image of 3.8. It's going to expose the application port 3111, and it's going to install packages defined in requirement.txt. It's going to ensure that the database is initialized with the predefined post in the init.db, and then the application should execute at the container start. Then after this, we are going to build a Docker image using the Docker file, and we are going to create a Docker image and test it locally. The Docker image is going to reference the Docker build is going to reference the Docker file, and it's going to tag the image texture, and it will ensure it will make sure it's in a specific location of the Docker file. Then this we're going to run it locally with a detachable mode of -p7 111 and we will use this endpoint to test this locally. So we're going to place all the command in this docker command file, and we're going to copy and paste the change log in the same file. So at the end of this, we would have created a docker file. So firstly, let me go and create the docker file. So I should have a docker file. Let me just copy here. We should have a docker file. So I'll go here. Let me clear this. My docker file is going to be inside of my tech trend. So I'll click create a new file, docker file. So in the docker file, I'll add my codes. So based on the instruction that is given to us that we should run it from Python 3.8, I am the maintainer label, and then this is going to copy from the app folder and it's going to use the app folder as the working directory. It's going to run pip install requirement.txt. We had already been given requirement.txt here. This is going to install Flask. It's going to install with and it is dangerous. It's going to install all this. Then it's going to run the Python init database.py, that is to initialize the database and to expose the port at 3111. So once we are done with that, it says build the docker image for the tech trend application and place the use docker command in the docker command file. So this for the docker command file, we need to build the image. So what I'll do first, I'm going to say docker login. Login succeeded. Remember that my docker is running here and this is the only image I have, and again I'm also logged in from here. This is my username. So for me to build this image from this docker, so the first is going to say docker so to build this docker file, I'm going to say docker build, the name like -t, that's the detachable, the name, and inside of this dot tells it to build in this same directory. So I'll press enter and this is going to build my image. To start building the image, I have some steps, I think 1 to 5 steps that is going to execute. Yeah, a successful build is going to look like this after we have run the docker build -t, which is going to build in the current work directory. So I can go and check that in my docker desktop. You can see from here I have the tech trend image with a tag of latest and the image ID, which is created less than a minute ago. And this would have created well, I'm going to run a code to create a container later. So this just created the image for me, and yeah, you're going to copy the code and put it in your docker commands. So I have docker, yeah. So the next thing is for me to run the application, and then remember that we are asked to run the application in this detachable mode of 7111 and 3111. Oh, and we are going to use that to test the application locally. Then place the docker run in the docker command file. So I'll go back to the code and I'm going to say docker run detachable, the endpoint and the name of the image. So I'm going to copy this container ID because I'm going to need it. I'll save that here. So the same thing with my docker with the code I used to run the application. So this is running. So if I go back to my docker, I'm going to see that I have a container which is TechTrain latest, and this is running at port 7111. This running 27 seconds ago. So I'll just save that. So for me to retrieve the logs, that's I need to check that this is running first. I'll just take the URL, then I'll do some tests. You can see that means our Docker image is intact. Do some tests. I'm trying to do some tests like the random test for application, retrieve this, and that row. So you can do for that test depending on how you want. So once I'm done with that, for me to retrieve the log, I'm going to say docker log, then the ID of the container, this container ID. So I'll just copy this and run the code. Yeah, so I have the logs here. So you can see this was the last thing I did. When I tried to retrieve this was retrieved. Then you can see that Kubernetes certifications was retrieved, Docker was retrieved. Anything I do, test debug message, you're going to see it here. So what you're going to do now is you're going to copy this. You're going to copy these logs from here. Going to copy everything and add it in your Docker commands here. So I'll save this. That is it for the Docker log. So once I'm done with that, then we have accessed the application through this endpoint and we have run it locally. You can take a screenshot depending on what you asked to do, then access the application log from the Docker container, place the Docker commands to retrieve logs in the Docker command file. Then you copy and paste the directed logs in the Docker commands file, which we have done. So that will be all for this aspect. So furthermore, you can just tag this image. So let me just go back to Docker Hub and create a repository. I'll call the repository tech trend. So that I'm going to tag this. I've created a repository called tech trend. Then I can just say docker tag the name, my ID, username, my docker tag tech trend, that's the image name, this, and it's going to tag it a version of 1.0.0. So I want to push this tag to my Docker Hub account. I'll just say docker push this, my username, then the name of the image and the version. I'll also add the two codes to my Docker commands. So you can see from here now I have this which is in use, and the tag is version 1.0.0, and it has an image ID. This is also created 6 minutes ago, so that is off. And here the docker push for the local repository has been pushed. So if I go and click on tags to confirm, I can see that I have a version 1.0.0, and this has been created some minutes ago. So that is all for the docker side. Now the next thing is the continuous integration with GitHub Action. So for this we need to create a YAML file called techtrend docker org YAML, and it's going to be in the GitHub workflow directory. So this asks us to make a directory, and then our GitHub Action should have a file that is going to include the techtrend package docker. It's going to trigger a push on main. It's going to use the Ubuntu latest operating system, and then at the end of this we would have created the .git workflow, GitHub workflow techtrend docker or YAML. We'll take a screenshot of a successful run, and then we're going to submit the screenshots of the docker or techtrend image in the screenshots. I think this should be a mistake from their end. So to do that, we need to first push our code to GitHub. So I'll open another terminal. I'll say by that you would have already created a GitHub repo. I've created a GitHub repo from here. I've created the repo from here. So I'm going to push my code to the repo. So to do that, I'm going to say git init to initialize git first. Then git add whole. Git commit -m. Okay. Git main to change the branch, because this is already, it is a master branch. I need to change it to, oh my god, it is a master branch. I need to change it to main branch. Then git remote add origin, and lastly git push. Then git push. Okay, so this, we have a successful push. So I need to double check that. Yeah. So yeah, we have our project push to GitHub. So to perform this action to create the GitHub workflow techtrend, I need to get the name first. But before that, I need to perform some authentication. So I need to add a Docker Hub token. I need to also create a GitHub encrypted secret. So let me retrieve my Docker Hub token first. So for us to retrieve our Docker Hub token, what we're going to do is come to from here we come to account settings, then security, then access token. So yeah, I'd already created an access token that I'm using. If you want to create your own, you just click on new access token and you're going to get to fill the information and generate. So once you click on generate, you have to save the token somewhere, else you will not be able to get it again. So I have this that I've already retrieved and it's saved somewhere. I just need to go back and retrieve it. So give me some minutes to retrieve the access token. So I have retrieved the access token. So to add it to our GitHub so that it's going to help us perform the action according to what we have here, create Docker hub tokens and the GitHub encrypted secrets. So I'll go back to my repo. I'll come to settings, then I'll go to secret actions, then I'm going to say new repository secret. That I'm going to add um the Docker hub token first, and I'll post the token and I'll say add token. Then I'll add the username. That's my username. I'll say add. Then I'm going to add the password as well. And I'll say add. So yeah, I have the repository secrets where I have the Docker hub password, the Docker hub secret, and the Docker hub username. Yeah, and this information cannot be retrieved. You can either edit or delete it. Once this has been saved, you cannot get the information. So that will be all for the repository secret. So the next thing to do is to go to the actions. You go to actions. I need to retrieve the name where I want to save my GitHub action. So I'll click on set up a workflow yourself. Then I'll change this name to the name that we are given to. So it's tech trend docker hub dot YAML. So I need to add the YAML script that I've already written. I'll just go through it underscore. So yeah, we're asked to give it a name of tech trend package with docker from here, and this is going to trigger a main branch. It's going to run Ubuntu latest. So from here, it's going to trigger on the main branch for the push and the pull request. It's going to build the run on Ubuntu latest, and these are the information from the Docker secret, where it's going to use this to log into Docker Hub. It's going to use the username, Docker Hub username, and the token that's been supplied to the secret under the actions. Then it's going to build and push this with the Docker file that is provided on this repository, and it's going to target the username, the name of the image, and the version of the image, which is latest. Remember that the version of the image that we have before is version 1.0.0, but now we want to tag this latest. So I'll start the comments. Let me say new Docker file, and I'm going to commit new file. So let me check this is running. I'll go back to the actions. You can see from here, I'll go to new Docker. I'll click on build, and I can see that this is in progress. Yeah, I have a successful build. So you have to retrieve the information in your build and push and take a screenshot. From here now we can see that we have 4 steps. So from one, this builds, then we have the copy, the work directory it's using is going to run the pip install requirement.txt, and then it's going to initialize the database, and then it will now do the last one, which is going to put the push. So we can double check that from our Docker hub. So when I click on tag again, yeah, this is my latest tag. So this is from the GitHub repo that I just referenced. So we have a successful build. From here you just take a screenshot of this and share in your Docker, in your screenshot. So from here you ask to take a screenshot and share in the screenshot folder. So that'll be all for the Docker or the continuous integration with GitHub Action, not the Docker or with GitHub Action. So I can go back to my repo and I can see that everything is up to date. Let me go back to my and say git pull. Okay. Okay, everything is up to date. So that'll be all for the step 3. So the next step is the Kubernetes declarative manifest. So for the Kubernetes declarative manifest, we have to deploy a Kubernetes cluster using the Vagrant file. And then this is going to create a Kubernetes cluster with the K3s. We had already been given a Vagrant file. So what we need to do is to say Vagrant up, then we need to give it a root access with sudo su, and then we're going to say Kubernetes kubelet get node to get the running nodes that we have there. And here we're going to use the Kubernetes declarative manifest to create a namespace.yaml, which is going to require all this information. We're going to create a deploy.yaml. We're going to create this service.yaml as well. So to do this, I'll go back to my code. So the first thing we have to do is to deploy a Kubernetes cluster using a Vagrant box and K3s. So I'll go back here. So I can let me just do this. I can clear this. So I'll say Vagrant up from here. Remember that we have been given a Vagrant file from here, see, and this is going to forward the port to 8080, 611 and 6112. It's going to deploy a virtual machine memory with that of 4096, and the CPU is going to be 4. It's going to customize it's going to have a VB customization with modify VM. So I'll say Vagrant Hub. So yeah, we have a successful Vagrant Hub. So the next thing is to SSH into the Vagrant. So I'll say Vagrant SSH. Now I'm in. So what I will do next is to have a root access with sudo su. I'll say sudo su. Yeah, I have a root access. The next thing is to deploy the Kubernetes cluster. Then we need to refer to this documentation for us to deploy it. So when I go to this documentation, I'll have to copy this URL. So I'm going to use this URL to install K3s inside of my virtual bus. This is going to install K3s. This will take some time, so I'll just pause and come back and check later. Here's the output of deploying the K3s and the Kubernetes cluster from the K3s documentation. Then now we had already given ourselves the root access. So the next thing is to run kubelet get nodes to get all the running nodes. So I'll do this, and you can see that we have a local host and we have the status is ready, the role is control plane, and the master role, and the version is this. It was created 7 minutes ago. Now we have to create our Kubernetes declarative manifest file, the namespace, the deploy.yaml, and the service.yaml. So to do that, let me say ls first. So I only have bin, so I need to have the namespace.yaml. So to do that, I'm going to say touch namespace.yaml. So this, and I'm going to enter inside of it, and I'm going to add the manifest. So I'll say vim namespace.yaml. So I'll press I to insert, then I'll copy this. I have the API version of version, and the kind is a namespace, the metadata, and this. I'll press escape to escape the insert mode, and I'll press this WQ to quit and save. So when I say cat name space dot YAML, I'm going to see that I have this inside of. So the next thing now is to create the deploy, and then the service. I'll say touch the same step that I used for creating the namespace.yaml. I'm going to do the same thing for deploy.yaml and the service.yaml. So I'll say vim deploy.yaml, and I'm going to press I for insert, and I'll get the code. So all the code for this, I added it to the repo that I push, so you can get it and use it. And I'm going to press escape, then colon WQ to quit and save. If I say cat deploy .yaml, so I can see that here I have the API version of 1. I have the deployment, the kind is deployment, and it's going to use this texture, and it's going to have a namespace, and then it's going to have a health endpoint with a port of 6112, and have this memory and node. I'll do the same thing for service dot. So I'll say touch then vim I for insert, copy the code, then escape, then colon WQ to quit and save. Cards, yeah, I have the kind of service, the label, the app is tech trend, the name of the app is going to use a port 411, a TCP protocol, and all the information that is required for us to use. Once I'm done with that, I need to apply all this. So I'm going to run kubelet apply the name of the file -f and the name of the file. So I'll say kubelet apply this, enter. I should have an output, namespace sandbox created. I'll run the same thing for deploy and service. Kubelet apply -f deploy.yml and then service. So now I can see that I have namespace, service, the deployment.app has been created, and the service tech trend has been created. After I've done this, then I can say I should get all the nodes in the namespace. Yeah, so from here I can see that I have a name which is pod.techtrend. It says it's ready. The status is container creating. This is going to take some time, so we can just leave it to create. Then I have a name, I have a deployment, I have a replica which has a 1 1. So I'll wait for some time for this to create. Then I can also get all running nodes with kubelet get pod minus. So yeah, we can see that this is running, but this is saying the container is creating. So I'll just wait for some time for all this to create, then we can continue.